My name is Ethan. I'm a restaurateur in Denver and I own a flagship rooftop restaurant that's known for its private dining and signature events. It's a place that's seen some of the city's most important people. Tonight, though, the only person I was concerned with was my wife, Leona. I had arranged something special for her, just the two of us, a private tasting on the rooftop. I wanted the night to be memorable, a quiet celebration to mark another year together. It was my birthday, but it felt like it was going to be hers, too, with the way I'd gone all out. At 7:16 p.m., just as I was stepping into the private dining room, the unexpected happened. My phone buzzed on the table. It was a text from Leona. Simple. Blunt. My former business partner needs me. Don't wait up. No, happy birthday. No, I love you. Just a cold, dismissive text that cut through the air like a knife. I stood there in the dimly lit room, holding my phone, trying to process what I had just read. This was it, no excuses. No explanation. Just betrayal. The kind that didn't need words to be felt. She wasn't coming, and I had nothing left to say to her. I didn't cry, didn't rage. I just put my phone down, walked upstairs to our shared penthouse above the restaurant, and calmly packed her things. Her cookware, the fancy knives, the chef whites, everything that marked her as a chef and a partner in this life we had built. I took my time folding everything neatly, placing it in boxes. No emotion. Just methodical, the way you would pack away a life that no longer fit. It was strange how quiet everything felt, like the noise from the downstairs restaurant had stopped altogether. I grabbed the address I had found weeks ago, the farmhouse property owned by Gavin, the man Leona had mentioned countless times as the business partner who had wronged her years ago. The man who now, it seemed, had her. I called a delivery service. Everything, down to the smallest details of her life, was going to him now. I didn't even feel a surge of anger. I just knew it was over. Leona had chosen him. And I had chosen my peace. The next morning, I woke up to the sound of the elevator chiming, signaling someone's arrival. I didn't need to guess who it was. Leona. She walked in without knocking, her eyes tired, her makeup from the night before still visible beneath her eyes. She looked like someone who had stayed up too late, partying too hard to remember what had happened. It didn't matter. I wasn't about to make her feel at home. She walked past me, dropping her keys on the counter as if nothing had happened. Like the text from the night before, like everything wasn't a betrayal. She was wearing that same perfume, the one I'd always loved, but it didn't smell the same anymore. It was just another reminder of her lies. She took a deep breath and went straight for the bathroom, washing off the remnants of the night before. I stood there, watching her move around, and I felt nothing. No relief, no anger, just an overwhelming numbness. When she came back out, her eyes met mine. She wasn't sorry. She never was. Ethan. She started, her voice soft, like she wanted to apologize, but the words never came. I cut her off, my voice steady. You don't live here anymore. Her expression faltered for just a moment, and then she snapped back into the cold, calculating Leona I had known for so long. What's that supposed to mean? I walked over to the counter where she had left the boxes. I'd already called the locksmith. The locks had been changed. Her name had been removed from the bills, from the accounts. Everything was redirected. She didn't get to come in and pretend everything was fine. I said, my voice colder than I expected, you don't live here anymore. Your things are packed. The delivery's already on the way to Gavin's farmhouse. And the locks have been changed. Her face twisted in disbelief. She took a step forward. You're really doing this? On my birthday? Her eyes flashed with anger. You're acting like a child. I let out a dry laugh. Funny. That's exactly what you were doing last night. You didn't even have the decency to tell me you weren't coming home. You didn't have the decency to care. She crossed her arms, standing tall. It's not like that, Ethan. I had to go. Gavin needed me. The bitterness I had been holding in for hours started to leak out. Gavin, I repeated, my voice sharp, the same guy you've told me, time and time again, stole from you? The one who ruined your career? The same man you've sworn to never speak to again? That Gavin. Leona hesitated. She couldn't look me in the eyes. Things change. I shook my head. Yeah, they do. And now you're leaving me for him, for a partnership that doesn't even exist. You never were who you said you were, Leona. You just never had the guts to admit it. She stood there silent. I knew she was processing it, trying to figure out what to say, but there was nothing left. No more words I needed to hear. No more excuses. I met her gaze one last time, letting the weight of everything hang in the air. Get your things. And don't come back. She opened her mouth to say something, but nothing came out. Her lips pressed together tightly as she turned, walking toward the door. She didn't look back. She never did. The door clicked shut behind her, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I felt the silence settle in deeper than before. The first email came 2 days later, a tip to the local health department. Anonymous. I was sitting at my desk, finishing up a few orders for the restaurant, when I saw the subject line, Health Department Tip, Unsafe Practices at Ethan Wilder's Restaurants. My stomach twisted, but I opened it anyway. The email detailed fabricated claims about my restaurant's food handling practices, all written in a way that made it sound legitimate. Like someone who had been in the industry would have made the accusations. It wasn't just a vague complaint, it was specific, detailed, and malicious. I stared at the screen, the irritation starting to boil under the surface. The audacity. The nerve of it. Just as I was about to delete the email, my phone buzzed. Another message, this time from my lawyer. Ethan, we've got a zoning complaint filed against your restaurant. They're claiming your rooftop dining space is violating city codes regarding occupancy and fire safety. You need to get on this ASAP. I clenched my jaw. This was no coincidence. These were coordinated attacks, the kind of thing people did when they had nothing left to lose and everything to gain. I leaned back in my chair, rubbing my temples, trying to think clearly. The timing couldn't have been worse. I had just made all the necessary adjustments for the upcoming season, and now this? Now Leona had decided to take her revenge. I took a deep breath. She wasn't going to win. I was done being the victim, done letting her control everything. Then my phone rang again. This time it was a voicemail. I opened it, recognizing the voice of one of my chefs. Ethan, we need to talk. There's something strange going on. One of the servers got an email, too, accusing you of creating a hostile work environment. This is really serious. I closed my eyes for a moment. The familiar feeling of dread settled in my chest. I had expected something, maybe a smear campaign, but this was more direct, more destructive. Leona was attacking me where it would hurt the most, my business. I sat there in silence for a while, letting everything sink in. A few hours later, after some digging through emails and calls to contacts, I found the final piece of the puzzle. Leona's lawyer had filed an official accusation of mental abuse, claiming I had created a hostile work environment at my restaurant. It was all lies. Every word of it. But the damage was done. The accusations were out there now. They were already circulating, and all it would take was a few more whispers to put my name in a corner. The kind of corner you couldn't get out of easily. I made a decision right there at my desk. I wasn't going to fight with the same weapons she was using. I wasn't going to get caught up in her petty revenge game. Instead, I was going to expose her. I opened up my laptop, fired up the secure drive, and began collecting everything I needed. Emails, phone records, contracts, everything. I kept detailed records, not just for the business, but for my own peace of mind. I knew what this could turn into, and now I was going to make sure I had every tool to dismantle her lies. If Leona wanted to ruin me, I would show the world who she really was. The next day, I walked into the restaurant early, before the lunch rush. It was quieter in the morning, when the lights were still dim, the music off, and the kitchen was just starting to wake up. I needed the peace, needed to collect my thoughts before the storm hit. But the storm was already here. I hadn't been in the office for more than 20 minutes when I heard the unmistakable sound of heels clicking on the polished floors. My stomach tightened. Leona. She swept in like she owned the place, still wearing the same fake confidence, the same air of someone who thought they could control everything around them. She looked perfect as usual, too perfect, her hair slicked back, her black coat sharp and pressed, the perfume still lingering from the night before. But underneath all that, there was something I couldn't ignore, her eyes, wide and defensive like she was ready for a fight. Ethan, she said, her voice too sweet, too rehearsed. We need to talk. I didn't stand up. I didn't offer her a drink or even a smile. I just stared at her, leaning back in my chair, keeping my distance. What's there to talk about, Leona? She didn't hesitate. The restaurant. You've been spreading rumors about me. I've been hearing things. You're trying to make me look like the villain. I shook my head. You don't need my help to look like the villain, Leona. She shot me a sharp look. But I didn't flinch. This was it, the showdown. I was done letting her manipulate me. Done pretending she was still the woman I married. You know what you did, she continued, her voice rising, now losing the fake sweetness. You froze our joint accounts. You're locking me out of the business. You're trying to destroy me. You did that yourself, I said quietly, my eyes cold. I didn't need to do anything. Her eyes flashed with anger, and she took a step closer, her heels clicking on the floor with each move. I told my lawyer you pushed me, she hissed, her face turning red. I told them everything. I'll cry on the stand, Ethan. They'll believe me. You'll lose everything. I didn't respond right away. I just let the silence settle in, giving her a moment to realize she wasn't going to scare me. She wanted a reaction. She wanted to see me cower. But that wasn't happening. You can't intimidate me anymore, Leona, I finally said, my voice steady calm. I've been watching you for months, and I know exactly what you're doing. You thought you could use me, manipulate me. You thought you could just walk away and leave me holding the bag. But I'm done. Her jaw clenched, and she took a step back, but only for a second. She was quick to regain her composure, as if to remind me that she wasn't done yet. You don't get it, do you? She spat. You're not going to get away with this. Gavin's going to make sure you pay. I stood up slowly, meeting her gaze. I don't care about Gavin. You think I'm scared of him? This isn't about him. This is about you. You're the one who walked away, Leona. You're the one who chose him, not me. She looked at me for a long moment, and I could see the cold realization settling in. She wasn't going to get what she wanted from me. There was no more manipulation, no more games. I don't live here anymore, I reminded her quietly, my voice softer now but still firm. You don't work here anymore either. The locks are changed. Your things are packed. And I'm moving on. She didn't answer right away. For a second, I thought she might try to come up with something, some kind of excuse or plea. But instead, she just stood there, seething with fury. Fine, she spat. You'll regret this. I'll make sure you do. I smiled, but it wasn't out of kindness. It was a smile that told her I wasn't afraid. I'm not the one who will regret this, Leona. You're already gone. With that, she turned, leaving the office without another word. I didn't move to stop her. I didn't try to convince her to stay or change her mind. I was done. She could go. And this time, I wouldn't be waiting for her to come back. It was a week after Leona left. The storm had passed, and now everything felt quiet. The restaurant was still running smoothly, business as usual, but every time I walked into the kitchen, I felt a sense of emptiness where her presence had once been. I couldn't tell anyone what had really happened. Not yet. Not until I had the full picture. I couldn't risk it. Not with the way things were starting to unravel. My lawyer had been working overtime to counter her accusations, but it was becoming clear that Leona's retaliation was just beginning. Then, one day, I was in the back office, sorting through some old files and receipts when I saw it. Leona's old Android phone, tucked away at the bottom of a drawer. I hadn't noticed it before. I picked it up, turning it over in my hands. The screen was cracked, the edges worn from too many drops. It wasn't much, but it was hers. I hadn't even realized it was still here. A part of me wanted to throw it away, to keep my distance from everything that belonged to her. But another part of me, some darker, more cautious part, knew I needed to know the truth. I powered it up, swiping the screen a few times, watching it come to life. I wasn't sure what I was looking for, but I had a feeling this phone held more than just texts and contacts. It held a story. As the home screen loaded, I accessed her messages. My fingers froze on the screen. Dozens of messages. Some from Gavin, others from people I didn't recognize, but what struck me were the ones from Leona herself. Mocking me, mocking us. She had been keeping records, too. There were intimate photos of her with Gavin. Photos that made me sick to my stomach. But it was the texts that truly gutted me. Dinner plans. Casual, almost playful remarks about how predictable I had become. It was all a game to her. All of it. I scrolled down further, and there it was. A string of messages about the restaurant. About my work. Ethan's too proud to take advice. Isn't he? One text read, followed by a series of laughing emojis. I can't wait to steal his concepts and show Gavin. He'll never know it was me. He's so predictable. I felt the blood drain from my face. She had been siphoning my ideas. My recipes. Even my investor lists, the very things that had helped me build this place from nothing. She'd been taking everything I had worked for and giving it away, first to Gavin and now to whatever plans they were cooking up. I wasn't just her husband, her partner. I had been the stepping stone to something she was always planning to leave behind. I clenched the phone tighter in my hand, my heart pounding. But there was something else. Screenshots. A handful of photos showing her in meetings with Gavin, scribbling down my ideas. Pages from my original business plan. Concept notes, marketing strategies. Everything that had made my restaurant a success reduced to pieces of paper being handed to someone who never deserved it. I felt sick, but there was no time to wallow in anger. I had to act. I didn't even hesitate. I forwarded everything to my lawyer. Every text, every screenshot, every little piece of evidence that Leona had been stealing from me. She had crossed a line, and I would make sure she felt the consequences. It wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about clearing my name, about protecting what I had built. But above all, it was about taking back control. I put the phone down, my hands still trembling. The weight of it all hit me again, but I stood up and made the call. It was time to fight back. Leona wouldn't get away with this. The days that followed felt like a blur, each one packed with meetings, phone calls, and hours spent in the office working with my lawyer. But one thing was becoming clear: Leona wasn't going to let up. She was digging her heels in, escalating the legal threats, trying to make me bend. But now that I had the proof, the tables were turning. I was no longer in the defensive position. The emails from her lawyer, the anonymous accusations, they had been her opening salvo. Now it was my turn. And I was going to hit back hard. One morning, I stood in front of my desk, staring at my computer screen, a copy of the documents from Leona's phone open in front of me. I had spent hours going over every last bit of evidence, texts, emails, photos, all of it pointed to one thing. She had been planning her exit long before she walked out. Gavin had been more than a business partner. He had been her escape plan. But now everything she had done to undermine me was about to be exposed. I opened my personal email account, attaching the screenshots and files to a message I had drafted the night before. I didn't send it directly to the media, not yet. But I knew who would be interested in this kind of story: the city's top food critics, the local lifestyle magazines, and most importantly, the investigative reporters who specialized in uncovering shady business dealings. Subject: a story of deception in Denver's culinary scene. I hit send. My heart raced as I leaned back in my chair. But I didn't stop there. I pulled up the company CRM, accessing the accounts I had locked Leona out of, and with a few clicks, I froze our joint accounts. It was a clean break. No more access, no more control. Everything went into my hands, just as it should have been from the start. And then, just to be sure, I drafted one more email, this one for the press. A simple note to a journalist I had met a few months back at an event. Subject: exclusive, the real story behind Denver's best-kept culinary secrets. I included details about Gavin's fake credentials, about how he'd misrepresented himself to investors, and how Leona had been helping him siphon my intellectual property and restaurant concepts. There was nothing they could ignore in this story. Everything was documented. The financial records, the emails, even her own words in the texts. I hit send again. The backlash started almost immediately. Over the next few hours, I saw my inbox flood with responses. Some were from journalists wanting an interview. Others were messages from business associates asking if they could help. The story was spreading faster than I had anticipated, and it felt like I had finally reclaimed control. But I wasn't done yet. Next, I turned to social media. I made a quick post on my personal account, something vague but direct. I don't mind when people walk away, but I won't let them steal what I've built. A small, subtle declaration that I wasn't just a victim in this story. I wasn't going to hide. I wasn't going to let Leona's manipulations become my downfall. I wasn't done with her, though. I called the press office of the local food critic who had once praised my restaurant for its innovation. I needed them to know the truth, everything that Leona had been trying to bury. As the hours passed, I saw the first inklings of Leona's retaliation. Her lawyer sent me a cease and desist letter claiming that I was spreading defamatory information. But it was too late. I had already sent everything I needed to send, and the damage was done. She could cry all she wanted, but now the world would see her for what she was. A woman who had stolen not just from me, but from the people who believed in my work, my vision, and my restaurant. The war wasn't over, but the tide had shifted. I was no longer scrambling to defend myself. I was on the offense now. And I had no intention of stopping until Leona's lies were exposed and she had nothing left to hide behind. The courtroom was cold, sterile, and everything I feared it would be. The buzz of whispers from the crowd, the shuffle of papers, the clink of shoes on tile, it all felt distant, surreal. But when I glanced at Leona, sitting across from me with her lawyer, it hit me. This was real. She had come this far, filing accusations of mental abuse and hostile work environments against me, using every dirty trick in the book to try to drag my name through the mud. But she hadn't anticipated how much I had been preparing for this day. I didn't show it, but inside I was calm. I knew what was coming. I knew the evidence I had was airtight and her lies would collapse under the weight of it all. The judge, a woman in her early 50s, glanced at both of us, her eyes flicking between Leona's lawyer and mine. Leona's lawyer, a slick man in an expensive suit, opened the proceedings with an impassioned statement about how I had created a toxic work environment, that I had controlled every aspect of Leona's career, and that my actions had emotionally damaged her. He painted me as a man obsessed with power, someone who had manipulated his wife and his employees for years. I didn't react. I didn't flinch. Let them talk. Let them make their case. The defense went on, painting a picture of Leona as the victim, but there was a subtle shift in the room. The more they spoke, the more I could see the judge's skepticism. She wasn't buying it. When it was my lawyer's turn, I felt a small surge of confidence. He stood, walked over to the podium, and turned to the judge with a calm, measured voice. Your Honor, we will prove that these accusations are not just unfounded but orchestrated. My lawyer went on to present evidence, Leona's own texts, the emails, the records of my work, and the messages where she had mocked me behind my back. He even laid out how she had stolen intellectual property and tried to sabotage my business. Piece by piece it unraveled. It wasn't just a bitter divorce. It was a calculated betrayal. I watched Leona's face throughout the entire presentation. At first, she looked calm, maybe even smug, but as the details piled up, as her lawyer sat there powerless to respond, I saw the cracks. She shifted uncomfortably in her seat, her fingers gripping the edge of the table so tightly her knuckles went white. Her eyes darted around the room, looking for some escape, but there was none. Then came the final blow. My lawyer presented a set of financial documents showing how Leona had been siphoning money from our joint accounts and diverting funds into personal accounts that she shared with Gavin. Leona's lawyer shifted uncomfortably in his seat, and for the first time I saw him glance at Leona, his confidence waning. When it was time for Leona to testify, she stood shakily, walking to the stand, but her once poised demeanor was gone. She didn't meet my eyes. She didn't look at the judge. She just looked down, hands trembling. Her testimony was disjointed, inconsistent, and full of contradictions. At one point, she claimed that I had pushed her to go into business with Gavin, that I had been emotionally abusive in trying to control her career. But then, in another breath, she admitted that it had been her idea to work with him, that it had been her choice to cut ties with me and leave. It was like watching someone drown in their own lies. The judge's patience was running thin. Leona's credibility was slipping, and I knew we were almost done. After her testimony, it was my turn to take the stand. I had no desire to drag her through the mud, no need to get emotional or vindictive. I simply told the truth. I laid out the facts, the timeline, the way I had supported her and built a life together, only to watch it all collapse when she chose someone else. When I was finished, the judge leaned back in her chair, her eyes flicking between us. I've heard enough, she said, her voice steady and final. She didn't adjourn the session or ask for closing statements. She didn't need to. Leona's case had fallen apart. The lies had been exposed for what they were. A few minutes later, the judge returned with her decision. Based on the evidence presented, she began, her voice echoing in the quiet room, the claims of emotional abuse and hostile work environment are not substantiated. On the contrary, the evidence points to deliberate attempts to undermine Mr. Wilder's business, as well as the misappropriation of company resources. The court finds in favor of Mr. Wilder. I felt a wave of relief flood through me, but I didn't show it. Not yet. Not when I saw Leona's face, pale and slack-jawed, as her lawyer looked down at his feet in defeat. The judge continued. As for the division of assets, Mr. Wilder will retain sole ownership of the businesses, the restaurant, and all intellectual property associated with it. Leona Wilder will receive a settlement, but no further financial claims will be made against Mr. Wilder. The room went quiet, and I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. I had won. I had fought back and emerged on the other side with everything I had worked for intact. Leona's lawyer didn't even bother to try for an appeal. He knew it was over. Leona, on the other hand, just stood there, shaking, her eyes wide with disbelief. I stood slowly, taking in the moment. I had done it. I had protected everything that mattered. Leona's gaze locked with mine for the briefest second before she turned and stormed out of the courtroom. No apology, no remorse, just a shattered version of the woman I had once loved. The gavel came down and the judge left the bench. I didn't stick around to hear her verdict on the divorce. At that moment, it didn't matter anymore. I had already won everything I needed. And Leona? She was no longer a part of my life. I was free. It had been a few days since the court ruling, and the weight of everything that had happened was beginning to settle. The restaurant was humming with life as it always did. My team was working at full capacity, the hustle and bustle of orders filling the air. But inside, I still felt that quiet emptiness. There was no more Leona. No more deception, no more tension in the house. And yet somehow I still couldn't shake the feeling that something was unfinished. That night, I arrived back at my penthouse above the restaurant, expecting the usual silence. But as I stepped off the elevator, I saw her. Leona. She was sitting on the stoop outside our building, shivering in the cold, a large suitcase beside her. My heart skipped a beat. I approached slowly, my steps deliberate, but I didn't stop. I wasn't going to let her make me feel guilty. Not this time. Leona, I said, my voice measured, calm. What are you doing here? She looked up at me, her eyes red and tired. She hadn't been sleeping well. I could see it, the way her hair was unkempt, her makeup smudged from the tears she had no doubt cried in the days since the court hearing. I need to talk to you, she said, her voice trembling, almost pleading. I stopped a few feet away from her, arms crossed. I wasn't going to let her pull me back into the chaos, not after everything that had happened. No, you don't, I said softly. We're done, Leona. You made your choice. I'm not a part of your life anymore. Her lips quivered, and for a moment I thought she might cry. But she didn't. She straightened up, trying to gather whatever dignity she had left. Please, she whispered. I've made mistakes. I know I have. But I'm not asking for your forgiveness. I need somewhere to go. I don't know what else to do. I looked down at her suitcase, then back at her. Her eyes were pleading, desperate, but there was no hint of the Leona I once knew, the one who would have never admitted weakness. It was as if the woman standing before me was a stranger, someone I didn't even recognize. I took a deep breath, holding my ground. You had a home, Leona. You had everything. And then you chose him over me. You don't get to come back now. Her shoulders slumped, the weight of the words sinking in. You're right, she whispered, her voice cracking. I messed everything up. I know I hurt you. I'll always regret that. Her words hit me, but I didn't let myself feel sympathy. I couldn't. I'd been through too much. I turned, starting to walk toward the door. I'm sorry, but this is it. There's no coming back from this. Please, she said one last time, her voice so small it almost broke me. I don't know what I'm supposed to do now. I paused, my hand resting on the door handle. For a brief moment, I wondered what would have happened if I let her in. If I let her stay, if I let myself believe that we could somehow fix things. But I knew better. I couldn't go back. Not after everything. Without turning around, I spoke quietly. I hope you find what you're looking for, Leona. But it won't be here. I walked inside and the door clicked shut behind me. I stood there for a moment, my back pressed against the door. The quiet filled the space, the silence between us now an insurmountable wall. Leona was gone. And for the first time in a long time, I could breathe again. The weeks following Leona's departure were strange, quiet. At first, the silence felt like an abyss, like everything I had built was suddenly hollow, waiting to be filled with the chaos she'd left behind. But as time passed, I realized something. The silence wasn't empty. It was peaceful. I spent more time in the restaurant, focusing on the things I loved. The kitchen was my sanctuary, my escape. I dove into new menus, experimenting with dishes I hadn't had time to explore before. I spent hours with my team, refining the atmosphere, making sure the restaurant continued to thrive despite everything that had happened. I took long walks in the evening, letting the fresh air clear my head. The city felt different without her, lighter somehow. And as the days went by, I started to notice the small things I had missed. My schedule wasn't filled with Leona's calls and messages. I wasn't checking my phone, waiting for an apology that never came. There was just the work, the people I cared about, and me. One night, after a long shift, I sat alone at the bar. The restaurant was quiet now, the last of the guests having drifted away into the night. The place was almost empty, except for a woman sitting at a table in the corner, reading a book. I noticed her right away. There was something about her, something grounded but easygoing. Her blonde hair fell loosely around her shoulders, and when she looked up from her book, she caught my eye. She smiled, just a brief, polite smile, and for a moment, I felt something stir inside me. I didn't know what I was expecting, maybe just a casual conversation or an exchange of pleasantries, but I found myself walking over to her table, the urge to speak to her almost pulling me in. Do you mind if I join you? I asked, my voice surprisingly steady, even though the question felt foreign after everything with Leona. She looked up at me, her expression warm. Not at all. I was just finishing up anyway. I took a seat across from her. The restaurant felt like a completely different place now. Empty, but still alive. The gentle hum of the after-hours energy. So, what are you reading? I asked, trying to make small talk. But it felt different. Not forced, just natural. She glanced at her book and smiled again. It's an old classic, The Great Gatsby. It's been a while since I've read it. I nodded, intrigued. I haven't read it in years. Maybe I should revisit it. Seems like it might offer a new perspective now. She gave a soft laugh, and the sound was like music. It does. It's one of those books that hits differently depending on where you are in life. We fell into easy conversation after that, talking about books, the restaurant, life. It was the kind of talk I hadn't realized I was missing. It wasn't heavy or complicated. It was just two people connecting, talking about things that mattered and things that didn't. When she finished her drink, she stood to leave, and I found myself reluctant to let her go. "Thank you for joining me," she said, smiling again, her eyes bright. It was nice to talk to someone after a long day. I smiled back, feeling the unexpected warmth of the moment. "It was really nice. I'm glad you came in." She paused at the door, looking back at me for a moment. "Maybe I'll see you again sometime?" I nodded, the words feeling natural this time. "I'd like that." As she walked out into the night, I sat there for a moment, feeling something I hadn't in a long time. Hope. I wasn't sure what the future held, but it wasn't as daunting as it used to be. There were possibilities again. For the first time in what felt like forever, I felt like I was moving forward. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was ready for it.